Good afternoon and happy Friday to everyone who is following us. Thank you for joining us today. And my name is Sebastian Rodriguez, and I will be your host today. Welcome to the members of the European Campaign Playbook. We are a community of campaign professionals who are fighting for the values of the EU across the continent, and our mission is to write a playbook to win campaigns that is made by and for the members of the community. There are two ways you can engage with us today. You can follow us on social media. You can post your questions, and I promise that we will bring those questions to our guests and to the people talking today. The second way you can engage with us is by joining us on camera and make it even more engaging, make it even more interesting to participate. And we encourage you to do that. I'm going to post the link that you should follow to be able to join us on camera. We have a very interesting topic today, which is Rebranding Europe, with our guest today, Stavros Papagianneas. So grab your lunch or your coffee, wherever you are at this point of the day. If you are following us on social media, say hi. Let us know from which city, from which part of Europe you are listening us to, and we will start in 10 seconds. Hello again, welcome again, Stavros Papagianneas. Did I pronounce it correctly?
Absolutely. Καλό απόγευμα. Thank you very much for inviting me. Ευχαριστώ πολύ.
Thank you very much. Well, let me do a quick introduction about yourself, because you have quite an impressive resume, quite an impressive background. You've been communication officer in the European Commission. You've done press for and a spokesperson for the several diplomatic missions in Brussels. You are currently the managing director of a public relations consultancy called StP Communications, and overall you are a senior communications leader with more than 20 years of experience in strategic communications, public affairs, public relations, media relations, and event management. You were, which is quite cool, you were listed as part of the top 40 influencers in 2 consecutive years, 2017 and 2018. And what really brings you today is not the latest book, but one of your most recent books, that is Rebranding Europe, Fundamentals for Leadership Communications. And that is exactly what we really want to talk about today. We have a lot of members of our community who, over the last few days, have been giving us some ideas as to how we can rebrand Europe. But my proposal is that you, who are the expert on the subject, tell us a little bit more about you, how you came across to writing a book like this. And then we will continue with more questions with some of the people who have joined us today, and also we will answer the questions from social media. Over to you, Stavros.
Thank you, Sebastian. I have studied a little bit about me. I have studied communication sciences at the University of Brussels. That was in the 80s. And then I've worked for government, European Union, and private sector. It's why I have decided to write the book Rebranding Europe. The trigger was Brexit. So I remember well the day of the referendum. I was in a meeting on the press club of Brussels, near the council, Rue Froissart. And At that moment, I decided to write a book about why we need to rebrand Europe. And at the same day, there was an article of mine in the Belgian financial newspaper L'Echo about the communication of lies which conducted us to losing one member state. So this is about me, about the book. The book shows, well, it's a try to show why the European communication fails, not always, and why, how we can make it better.
So then you propose to rebrand Europe, and the reason is when at the moment you wrote the book, there was this perceived dissatisfaction with the EU. Certainly, the economic crisis and the financial crisis didn't help much. You are from Greece, so I can understand that even your compatriots were not the biggest fans of Europe at that moment. But since the moment you wrote the book, and also over the last few months, because everything has changed, do you think that the European institutions, that the European leaders, or NGOs, organizations, that they have started this rebranding, are they doing it right? What are we missing? What can we do better as European communicators?
Yes. Well, yes. It was not only Brexit. It was not only the Euro crisis. It's not only the pandemic. It's the European Union has never been engaging. It has never been sexy. It has been always perceived as boring and irrelevant. A problem is that the European citizens do not understand what is happening in Brussels, and the European Union fails to deliver when it comes to communication on all levels, actually, national, regional, European, global. And this is one of the difficulties is that the involvement of the citizen is a serious concern. Why we have this lack of involvement? There is not enough interest in politics. There is lack of knowledge in the political processes. What is happening in Brussels is complicated. There is a low level of trust in politicians. The European Union is very far for the most of the people. For example, when I was writing the book, I did a survey with different journalists in Brussels covering EU affairs, but also with regional journalists of regional newspapers. So I asked the question to two journalists. One was in Antwerp, 60 kilometers from here, and the other was in the south of Greece, in Kalamata, working for a local newspaper, a small local newspaper. So 2,000 kilometers from here. Both answered the same thing. They said, we cover very few things about the European Union because people, first, they are not interested, it doesn't sell, and second, it's too complicated. So I think this is the first reflection that we have to make. about the connection with the citizen. That is the reason that Europe needs a rebrand, I think. The main reason. There are a lot of other reasons as well.
Okay. Before we continue and talk and go deeper into the conversation, there are some people who are saying hi from social media. So we have Eduardo from Barcelona, who is listening to us on YouTube. We have Madeleine. I don't know where Madeleine is listening to us today, but because she's like such a globetrotter, and she might well be in Romania, maybe in the UK, maybe in Germany. So we will talk about, and I'm hoping that we can talk to Madeleine, who is a very creative social media activist. And also we have Claudio Rivedo following us on Facebook, and I can also see that he will be joining us on camera in a few minutes. But before we do that, let me. Yes, Madeleine says that she is watching us from Munich. So there you go, in Germany. I got it right. So let's go back to the basics. Whenever you're starting to build a brand, and most of the people who are following us today, we are communicators, we have consulting agencies, so we know what is involved in building a brand. One of the first things that you need to do is look at your audiences, not target audiences. Let's start with Europeans. No? So we want to communicate Europe to the Europeans to begin with. And what you can see, if you look at the data from for example, the Eurobarometer, is that especially since 2018, 2019, with the European elections seeing the highest turnout in 40 years, you can see that the people who feel, who identify themselves as Europeans is going up from, I think in 2012, it was around 10% of the respondents. Now it's almost 20. The people who dislike or doesn't show support for the European Union project is declining. So in terms of the audiences, what the data is telling us is that especially younger audiences, they are more sympathetic to the idea of Europe and more precisely to the European Union. But still, we have a large population that we are failing to engage. And what would be, for someone like us who are communicating Europe on a daily basis, what would be your key recommendations as to how we can rebuild our brand in a daily basis, in the work that we do every day?
So I would say that we have to let the citizens to get involved in the decision making. The European Union must show that it believes what it says in a clear and simple way. And I think we have to emphasize on the practical side of decision making and how it affects the people. And we need to something that we know, but it doesn't work every time. We need to focus to the specifics of each member state. We cannot communicate the same thing we cannot communicate in the same way that we communicate in Sweden as, for example, in Spain. We have to tell stories about how the EU has improved the life of the European citizens, to tell stories about our common history and culture, about the added value of EU funding and how it changes everyday's lives. to tell stories on how we can be stronger together and why. And another thing is that we have to stop the demonization of Brussels. The EU is a pain in the ass, as Mr. Orban says, but he comes to Brussels, he takes decisions, and then he goes back to Budapest with suitcases full of money of the European taxpayer. Brussels is not a pain in the ass. The EU is a tool for better lives. I believe it is, if it is well used, it guides us to a better future. So Brussels is not taking away your identity. In the contrary, the EU is the best guarantee that your identity will stay bright and will be respected for centuries. So be proud about the European Union. Be proud about what it has accomplished. Also, there is one thing that you all know. Good communication cannot repair bad political decisions. So we are in the middle of a huge identity crisis. You have told it, Sebastian. You spoke about the Euro crisis, what actually was a nightmare for the sound and certainly for Greece. Now we have the coronavirus pandemic. We have different realities in the EU. We have the division between the North and the South. And since 2004, we have a new division, a new dimension added, this of the East. So it's not easy to communicate about Europe. My advice is communicate what the EU can do, but also what it cannot do.
Thank you very much for those insights. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to bring to the camera a few of our members who decided to spend this Digital Friday lunch with us. And as you were talking, and you will see now, they are facing those same challenges you described, citizen participation, trying to customize the way that we communicate to different parts of Europe, not trying to just choose a slogan in English and then get it translated in all languages and push it no matter what. And I'm going to bring them now today so that they can introduce themselves, ask you a question, and then we'll do that. We'll have three of them asking you a question, and then you will have enough time to respond. So firstly, I will bring Denes from Hungary.
Köszönöm szépen, Evaristo Poli, muchas gracias.
Denes is a European campaigner. He's a European communicator. Please tell Stavros what you are currently working on, and if you have any question, just shout it.
Absolutely, thank you very much. Well, I'm one of the Hungarians who are here in Brussels to get our value for money as an EU taxpayer, so to speak, as you mentioned, Stavros. And I have a very specific question. If you were an MEP, how would you communicate European Union, how it functions to your citizens in your constituency? And could you name one thought-provoking tactic, technique, or tool to do it? Because I work for an MEP Vince Loran from the EPP group, so I would very much appreciate your insight.
Well, I would first of all thank you for your question, Nagy. And I must say, before answering your question, I am the founder also of an NGO called Steps for Europe. And for the moment, I am connecting with possible ambassadors for the NGO whose actually primary goal is to reinforce the European public sphere. So we have someone also from Hungary who is ambassador for Hungary, which is a journalist actually who lost his job. And so if I was a member of the European Parliament, I will go on 2 tracks. First track is the common culture. I will emphasize what is uniting us, that we have a common history, a common culture, and I will work on this. This is a good thing, because Europe is not about policies or funding. It's much more. It's also about making connections and contributing to the creation of the European public sphere through culture, arts. This is something very powerful that is connecting us. So it has the power to enrich the European societies and make them more inspiring places to live. The second thing is the second track is I will take, it's this of the EU funding. This is a tremendous tool that we can use. It's to promote the European values. Is that the European Commission awards money in the form of grants for the implementation of its activities and its policies, and this I think by communicating the human aspects, the results, the added value, and the direct impact of the projects to the citizens' daily lives, it's very important. And also very important is to have the knowledge what are the solutions that this funding has brought to us, and to existing problems that were there, and by the funding they are solved. So these are 2 tracks, I believe, that I will use to building trust and reputation, but also support again the creation of the European public sphere. It's something that I talk I talk a lot in my book Rebranding Europe about the creation of the European public sphere. I think it's important, and we have to work on that more in the future.
I wholeheartedly agree. No, I completely agree, especially in consideration of the fact that I see behind you, you have the dolphins from the palace of Minos and Knossos in Crete.
Yes.
And that a Hungarian can recognize that by a glance shares that we do share culture. And I would say that especially today, since today is the day of Hungarian culture, I completely agree with you. So we put out a few tweets regarding that. So let me pass on to the other guests, but I wholeheartedly agree.
Thank you very much for your question.
Thank you, Dennis. The next one that I would like to introduce to you, Stavros, is a friend of mine, Claudio Rivedo, and he knows a thing or two about branding, I can tell you, but I will leave it to him to introduce himself, and please ask any question you have in mind right now.
Thank you very much. Still learning. Still learning. So yeah, I'm from Brazil, and it's a pleasure to be here. And actually, I live in Germany, and my family is from here. My wife is from here, so I'm also very involved and concerned, and at the same time, wishing to get the best of Europe. You know, that's Europe can actually have a very good position, so people can understand the values. You know, that is, in my opinion, the main thing about this European Union is actually the union, and I think it's a very important asset. I have a question here. In your opinion, do you think that Europe is already inspiring people? Do you think that people know with clarity what is the purpose of European Union and the philosophical purpose of it? Why does it exist in a way that can inspire people and make people more connected to it?
Thank you for your question. The answer is no. They don't know. No. That was in the European Union has realized quite late the value of communication, and it was just before I believe the elections of 2014. That was and now it tries to with different tools and different campaigns to communicate with the citizens. They have underestimated the value of communication towards the citizens. Also, this has also an historical background. When the European communities were created after the World War II, not all the countries were were ready for such a development. So most of the decisions and policies were not communicated, for the reason that Europe was still divided after the World War II and in the 50s. So the lack of communication has also this historical result. The founding fathers of the European Union didn't communicate very much about what they were doing at this time. So we arrived in the 2010 and something, and we realized that. Another thing is still the problem, communication, it's not a priority for the European Union. And it has only been a priority during the first Barroso Commission. So there was a commissioner also for communication, that was Margot Wallström, and so that was the only time in the history of the European Commission that communication was a priority and was given a dedicated commissioner. Then they have eliminated the portfolio at the political level, and I think the last year it has even become more complicated on rules allowing officials to speak with the press. I believe rather than opening, they are now kind of closing possible channels on fears that they would be taken hostage by populists. So my answer to your question is no.
Okay, let me now introduce you, Stavros, to someone with whom we got in touch at the very beginning of our creation of the community. She she is a social media activist. Actually, she's been inspired by the European Union project, and she, on her free time, she does a lot of work trying to communicate the values, trying to engage younger audiences on Instagram. Her name is Madeleine. Is that young activist that I said that could be here, could be in Germany or in Romania. She's not only she's physically in Munich, but she is also with us now. Over to you, Madeleine.
Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me. Yes, Stavros. I am very interested in getting your book because I feel like that is something that I'm very interested in and working on as a sort of non-government agency. I'm trying to rebrand Europe sort of on my own terms and on the social media, in civil societies. So I think that's important as well. I don't have so much of a question. I have a commentary based on some experience of my post, in that I did a post where I highlighted 3 local projects that the EU did in different countries. I think it was in Belgium, in Poland, and in Bulgaria. I think it was the EU invest different projects that the EU invested in, and I saw that post did really, really well. And I think something that is missing from a communications aspect on the European Union websites is this focus on really specific local projects that highlight what the EU does at a smaller level, because I just find that personal stories work so much better. So for example, in Poland, the EU invested in these like farms where they took care of older people, and the farmers, got money for renting out their farms, and the older people were able to do activities, to bond, to be together. It was aimed at combating loneliness. For example, that's such a nice personal story that the EU had a lot to do with. But as you say, people don't, I'm a very active person. I didn't know about all of these little projects, and they're just not, what I find is that they're not presented very well on either social media campaigns or on the website. The website is, of course, it's a huge organization. So there has to be, they have a lot of archives and things that they're going to have to do. But do you think there's a way of displaying that information more? Do you think the EU should display that information more? And is there a way that the EU could better, communicate those types of projects, for example?
Sure, Madeleine, thank you for your question. This is very important. It's critical, it's paramount to communicate these projects and the results of the projects. Now, I believe in all funded projects by the European Union. There is it's obligatory, I think it's mandatory to communicate about that. So you need to have a website, social media, etc., etc. Of course, I have worked on Horizon projects and before Horizon FP7, and my job was to communicate complex and projects funded by the European Union, and I had to sit down with scientists which were brilliant in what they were doing, but they were not communicators. So, there were even projects very difficult to understand and then much more difficult to explain. So what I did, I started the base of the communication was a press release. So I made a press release, and then I was sitting down with them to see if everything was clear. And if it was clear to me, it was, I believe it was also clear for the large public. So sometimes I had to change 5 or 6 or 7 times the press release after sitting with them and going further and further on scientific terms and explanation. And so when from the moment that I had the press release, then we started with a further communication tools and campaigns about that. But this was the starting point. Another thing that I have seen during the years is that there are not enough professional communicators working with the European institutions, governments, and that has also, I am speaking about that also in my book, that has also to do with the acceptance of the communication as a policy, as a tool, but also as a social science. So there is not enough, not only in the governments and in the public sector, but also in the private sector, there is not enough attention and value for communication. Communication is a side dish, if I can say it so. There are a lot of people that think in the institutions, in governments, but less in the private sector, that everybody can communicate. That's not true. Not anybody can communicate. And it's not about logos and having a colorful website. It's much more than that. So we have to bring more communicators, more specialists, more professionals inside the European institutions, inside associations that are pro-Europe, and they want to promote the values and the added value of the European Union. And what we need also, we need more budget. For example, the last time for the budget for the last 7 years for communication in the institutions was 500 million euro, which is 0.5%, even less of the total budget of the institutions. So we need resources and we need money.
Great. Thank you, Stavros. So we've done Hungary, we've done Germany, even Brazil. Now I bring you someone who is originally from Romania, and who is also is a professional communications and data analyst in the EU institutions. His name is Emilian. Hi, Emilian.
Hi, everyone, and well, it's nice to meet you and to know you, Stavros. It's very interesting and, if I may say, very pressing matters that you're touching. And I'd be very interested to actually to read the book, so I'll look for that. You've started this, and what Madeleine said about campaigning and how these messages actually reach the citizens, because that's the PR that actually you want to get. This is very this is actually the core of one of the campaigns that we're running now at the European Parliament, a campaign that is called Together.eu, and it's all about citizen engagement. So we'll see how that goes in the next years. We just begun last year with that. But going back when you started your intervention, you mentioned that EU is hard to sell. It's not sexy, huh? That's the thing. And it's hard to understand for people. To understand for politicians I imagine for regular people, for citizens, it's even harder. And you kind of said it. It's also a matter of representation. So these people, they may not feel that well represented, and this happens at national levels because we see the turnout at votes decreasing in pretty much all the countries. France is the best example with the Macron election in 2016, if I recall. So what can we do to change this problem of representativity? Is this pandemic a good moment to maybe to revamp the way we elect our representatives?
Yes, it's a good question. Thank you. It is a good moment because we understand now and we feel that there are things that we can't do on our own, and we need that to do together. We feel that we are connected. Not only in Europe, the whole planet is connected, and I strongly believe in that. And I strongly believe in a federated Europe, in a Europe really federal continent, and as I said, you can communicate, but if you have a product that doesn't work, or there is a problem, you can communicate, but the product is not good. So you have to change the product. You have to change the policies. You have to change the way of decision making, of representation. A huge mistake, I think. It was what happened with the last European elections with the Spitzenkandidat issue. They have all the groups bring a candidate forward. So the less of the things is that you can do is respect the candidates. So if you don't like the candidate and then you put someone else, although the candidate was the winner, then you shoot in your own legs. Actually, it's a bad thing. You cannot communicate about that. Then you lose trust, you lose reputation, and it's bad for you. These things, I will call it a certain tribalism that we have in Europe. And first thing to do is to stop with that. And if you have a procedure to elect the president of the European Parliament, for example, here, you have to respect that. If even if you are not a Christian Democrat or a liberal or a socialist, then if this is the candidate, you have to respect that. Then it will be to. My opinion is that the Council of the EU doesn't help the European constructions. It goes very slowly, and there should be a change in these matters. So it's I think it's difficult to communicate on all that, and it's there is a long way to do still.
Okay, thanks for that. I want to say that the conversation on social media keeps going. We have actually Jonas Hecker, who is going back to what Madeleine asked earlier. So there you go. There was a campaign, definitely in the on social media to promote EU-funded projects. I guess that's not enough, right? Because even if you are the target audience and weren't aware of it, then that speaks a lot about new channels that are probably untapped. I also want to bring this question from Eduardo, saying, well, probably why don't try to build that brand as part of a collective, no, of a smaller brands, no, that cater for the different, languages, culture, and ways of living, and the regional context and the local context. That probably is definitely a good point. I would like to hear your view on that, Stavros, later. I want to say just how I want to share how I see this when I try to think about it. We have the Conference of Europe coming up, if it does come up. So I think there's a huge opportunity here to put, to rebrand Europe using the Conference of Europe. The way I see it is you have like three main pillars. I mean, you can go on and on, but I would like to focus like on three main pillars to build this brand. One, let's say it's the to promote the assets of the European Union. So the goodies, no, all the projects that the European Union invests in, all the changes, all the life that the EU changes, how it supports its people. So it's what this goes back to the Monty Python's famous sentence. No, what have the Romans done for us? So this is the first one. I think it's very important to say what the EU is doing for you. Of course, it's not enough. Then you have another level, which is culture. I think we need to have a European culture. You call it the European sphere, public sphere, fine, but we need to have a common vocabulary, what it means being European, and there has to be something like for example, I'm from Spain. I'm from the south of Spain. I've spent most of my career, all my career overseas. So I've been long time that I haven't been in Spain, and I sometimes feel more. I feel closer to someone from Munich or someone from Berlin than someone from my neighbor. So there is definitely something there. Not what it means to be European. Is it having multiple identities and being very comfortable about having? I'm very proud of having multiple identities. Of course, that leaves the bulk of the population outside who my parents, they've lived in the same place forever, and they are happy there, and they have the roots and the culture, and probably they feel less European than I do. Probably they like that the EU funded the public school next door where I attended, but they don't feel, this European culture. And then the third one, which I think is probably the one that we can that has more power, is that we feel proud not of the museums, of the libraries that are funded by the EU, or that you can see that there is a European culture that you should adhere to or be proud of, but that it's our values. And we can see that very clearly by looking at the other side of the Atlantic over the last few years, and the big relief that we all got last Wednesday when Biden was inaugurated as a new president. But it is true. Like, perhaps what makes us European, what makes the European brand, is our values. Is we know that we are in a constant struggle to uphold those values, because they are in constant danger, and we have many examples in Europe. But maybe we need to talk more about rule of law, about what it means to be in a democracy, to respect the that we respect people's point of view, that we have freedom of conscience, freedom of religion, and probably these those values to me is what, at least when I think, and everything that is gonna be on my power, I will do it, is to try push these values and say we are Europeans, not because Europe give us money, but because we stand for these values. So you can even say we created these values. Those are part of our Western civilization, and we should be proud of it. And then the European Union won't be perfect, but it will be a project that will try to live up to these values, and that's just enough to get us going. Probably it's too idealistic, but that would be my question. And then I think Madeleine will have one after you come back to us.
Sure, absolutely, Sebastian. These are the promotion of the assets of the European Union, culture, our values. These are very important things. Also, the conference on the future on Europe is very important. It's a very important occasion to promote the European values and to show the added value of the European Union. And I hope it will start at a certain time. It was for last year, but it was postponed due to the pandemic. I have published about this conference an article in EU Observer some months ago. And of course, the European Union is a project of shared values and objective. We have to find ways to tackle this lack of a shared vision that some of us have and some of us have not. What is the meaning of feeling European? Like you say, Sebastian, you have been in many places, and sometimes you feel closer to someone in Munich. I understand that fully. I have 3 passports. I have worked in 4 different countries, and that since the 80s. So it's now about 40 years. It's I believe if we can find this the answer to that question, to see who are we, where are we going to, what is our vision, and agree on the shared values and objective, which actually we agree on paper, but it's not always. If you see now with the rule of law and many other things, but I said that before and I say it again, we have to say, what is the European Union? What can it do? And what it cannot do? For example, there is not a common, it's health, it's not a European responsibility at this moment. There is not a common health policy like it is with agriculture, for example. We don't have that. So we don't have to blame the institutions for things that are not of their responsibility. And it's the responsibility of the local governments. We don't have to blame Brussels when some things go wrong from the moment that the heads of states come to the council and they take decisions, and then they go back to the country and they say, no, it's not me, it's Brussels. We have to do that. So there is a lot of things that have to change. I hope that the conference on the future of Europe will not end like the constitution debate at the European Parliament, which I followed at the time. And that will, I hope that the conference on the future of Europe will really be a conference on the future of Europe, and not about who is going to lead it and things like that. We need a common vision. This is very important for Europe, and we need to stick with the values and the objectives that we have done. We need also, as communicators, to stop these myths and these populists' lies. We saw what happened in the US the 6th of January. That was a terrible thing, a really terrible thing. This is the way that this is what can happen when people and especially leaders, political leaders, are lying all the time. That's why I have made also a proposition in one of my blog posts, and I speak about the honesty of being a politician, and if it is a good way to take an oath, like doctors, and to being a politician, that you are there for the whole community and the whole country and your village, your city, and not to stay in power and to promote your own interests and not the interests of the whole. Yeah.
Thank you. Now, Madeleine, you have the floor.
Hi again. This is also so interesting. I would have so many questions, but I'm assuming we don't have much time. My one comment is that, of course, it is so difficult to define, our European values overall, because diversity is our strength. So it's such a fine line. And I think that is what makes it difficult to pin down exactly what the European identity is. But I do think that the European institutions and Europeans shouldn't shy away from promoting that and from using, the European way of life got a lot of criticism in the past. They said it was appeasing populists. I'm a liberal centrist, and I actually think it's okay. I think we shouldn't shy away from that language. I think it's counterproductive to do so from the liberal side. And I think that's what the EU has to find out. It's how to find that balance and communicate those values clearly. But anyway, my main question was actually more about what do you think about sort of the EU maybe outsourcing, or, of course, to an extent, or working with young social media activists to promote the EU, maybe in a more integrated or official capacity as consultants, even, as it were. Because one thing that I find quite nice as a sort of non-governmental actor is, of course, I have a little more freedom than a huge institution. I can make a bit more jokes. I can be a little more relatable. But I do think that it's important to bring a little bit of that, to make the EU sexy. It's important to bring some of those aspects also into official communications. And I do think that engaging with young activists and I know there's so many young EU activists. I think they're growing on Instagram and on social media. And it would be nice to see the EU sort of acknowledge that and maybe use their skill set and their knowledge to an extent. And what do you think about that?
I think this is very important. I think this is a great value that can be used by the European institutions. I would say a big yes. It is very important to have young activists promoting and supporting. It's not about promoting; it's about supporting and contributing to the shared vision and the public, the European public sphere. I think the role of young activists is very important, and it's like with influencers. It doesn't matter how many followers you have on social media. It's about how you interconnect and interfere with your audience. You can have 200,000 or 200, and the interaction with your stakeholders could be more intense with having 200 than 200,000. So I am convinced of the value and the importance of having young pro-EU activists supporting Europe. It's a good thing to do, and I will personally support this idea and see if in projects that I am involved can bring that forward.
Okay, and on that note, very positive one, I would like to end this call. Thank you very much, Stavros, author of the book Rebranding Europe. He's published a new one, so you just go and check it out. We will share the link with you. I've also received a lot of messages. There are a lot of questions without answering on social media. I was just asked by many to share this website that I'm sharing right now, which is it's called What Europe Does for Me, and it was done by the European Parliament. I think we've touched upon this. We've touched upon how we can communicate on what the Europe is doing for young professionals, for people in rural areas, etc. Everything is on that website, which I knew it existed, but thanks to those who reminded it to me. Well, I think that's the end of the session. Let's go back to our busy work before we enjoy the weekend, sunny weekend here in Brussels. You can see. And thank you again. See you next week, and stay safe. Bye. Thank you.
Have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.